MultiGreen, building attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily real estate through impact investing.
Welcome to the MultiGreen podcast. I'm your host, Randy Norton, and today we'll be speaking with Chief Development Officer of Sustainable Living Innovations, Rick Tallman. Today's case study highlights the MultiGreen mid to high-rise solution for Type 1 construction. Rick and his team are developing the world's first net zero energy multifamily high-rise, both affordably and at scale. At the heart of every SLI building is a complete urban infrastructure. It's an ecosystem driven by advanced data management systems. Last year, the subject property we call 303 Battery won the Digi Award for the world's most technologically advanced building. Together, SLI and MultiGreen are working on multiple site selections throughout the western United States. MultiGreen is proud to be their partner and shareholder. Enjoy our conversation. Rick Tallman, thank you so much for being with us today on the MultiGreen podcast.
Great to be here, Randy. Always good to talk to you.
Always good. I think the last time we connected, it was on a panel at the ULI Housing Conference, or the Housing Opportunity Conference, where we discussed net zero in residential housing. Is that correct?
That's the way I remember it. Pretty interesting. My favorite subject.
Well, today I wanted to advance that conversation and advance our commitment to net zero and really highlight a case study of your 303 Battery building there in Seattle. Is that okay?
Please do. Please do. In fact, here's a recent picture, almost finished with construction now.
Amazing. I think you guys topped that off on June 26th, 2022. Is that correct?
That's right. Absolutely. This building, you're seeing a picture from last week. The tower crane actually comes down this weekend. And the building, actually, the structure was put up in about 8 months by a crew with an average size of about 14 people.
It's incredible. For anybody that knows anything about construction, this is the impossible that is now possible. Before we get into this case study, I want to have you give our listeners a background on Sustainable Living Innovations, also known as SLI. You can go to your website at www.sli.co. Tell us, what is SLI and what is a building system?
Well, SLI is a company based in Seattle with corporate offices in Denver. It's been around since 2008, and we manufacture housing. Now, when people talk about prefabricated manufactured housing, a lot of times it brings up visions of the Soviet Union in the 1950s. Our product is anything but that. We've made sure that we don't ask the people that live in our homes to compromise in the quality of life. So our units have beautiful open layouts with no interior walls, sliding floor to ceiling window walls in every unit that open up to full balconies, 5-star acoustics, incredible internet connectivity, radiant floor heat, air conditioning, all of the top shelf attributes that everybody's looking for in the market. But we do it in a way, because it's prefabricated, that allows us to include a whole suite of advanced mechanical systems and reduce the impact of the building on the environment without making those compromises.
That's very thorough. To get to that point, there must be a long learning curve and a lot of architects and mechanical engineers behind the scenes to even come up with this concept, right?
It's so true. And we've found it's been an incredible journey with all of our engineering partners. One example is that we have a distributed DC electrical system in the building. And it turns out that electrical engineers in the US aren't really ever taught how to design those buildings. They're all AC. And so we've had to go back to the textbooks to put some of this design together with our engineers. But it really, before you start putting pencil to paper and calculating out all the energy budgets for the building, it really starts with a design philosophy of eliminating waste, dramatically reducing a carbon footprint, and reducing the amount of air pollution that comes from not just building the project, but operating it over the 75-year or 100-year lifespan of the building. That's where we started. So As certified by third parties, 303 battery will have 91% less waste, 92% less air pollution, and a 93% smaller lifetime carbon footprint than a conventional building. And that gets you a huge way in the direction of a zero net energy building. And once you've achieved all of that, then you can really start focusing on things like advanced mechanical systems and ultra efficient air conditioning systems and waste heat recovery systems and all of the incredible things that go into this. But at the end of the day, the result is that the building behind me, this project will generate more energy than it uses and will actually be a net carbon negative to the electric grid and the entire energy budget in the Pacific Northwest.
Rick, how did SLI attract top-tier institutional investors?
So over the last few years, as we have begun to develop the first zero net energy apartment buildings for SLI, we've gained a tremendous amount of traction by space leaders in various industries that are really focused on and see the great value to the market in bringing what all of those partners consider a new asset class, which is a zero net energy apartment building. It's one thing to, clean up the carbon footprint of an office building because no one lives there. It's a lot easier. But when you're talking about where people live and cook and sleep, it's a very big hurdle. And I think the value of bringing a product to market that is accessible to developers and builders today, anywhere in the country, is what got them all really excited about it. And so not only do we have great strategic relationships with the likes of Equity Residential, who is contracted to buy the 303 battery building at completion, Goldman Sachs, who is providing the financing for the construction of the building, but both of those and our other partners are also direct equity investors in the company.
Fantastic. And I'm going to the website for the benefit of our listeners, www.sli.co. I want to just read an excerpt from the website for 303 battery to give additional context for our listeners. And it says that the building is situated in the heart of Belltown, which I love that area. It's the 303 battery property that will deliver a 15-story, 112-unit net zero energy apartment building, including 27 much-needed affordable units. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. 5 of the affordable units satisfy the city's mandatory housing affordability, MHA requirements. And another 22 units will be income and or rent restricted as part of the multifamily tax exemption program. 303 Battery will be the greenest apartment building in Seattle when completed. And of course, construction commenced in 2021, and now it's becoming apparent that it will complete in the next 90 days with a certificate of occupancy. So that is a mouthful of some of the owner program requirements and specs that are into the building. Can you speak a little bit to the affordable units and how you made this more attainable for your targeted consumer group there in Belltown?
Absolutely. We believe that sustainable housing has to be not just rent-restricted, affordable housing, which is important, but to the theme here, it has to be accessible and it has to be attainable, not just for the developers who build the buildings, but people in them. And so not only are we setting aside, as you say, about 25% of these units for deed-restricted affordable housing, 90% of the units in this building are affordable to people making 120% of average mean income or less. And we do that not only because to some degree, because we make these smaller units in a market like Seattle, where the average family size in Seattle is actually one person. By creating smaller units that live bigger, we can keep rents at a more reasonable level. But the main reason is this building will cost 30% less to operate than a conventional building because it's so efficient. Efficiency is just found money. And by sharing that with the tenants, we're able to maintain market returns to our customers like Equity Residential while maintaining reasonable rents for the people that live there.
That's very intriguing. Again, going to your website and your marketing collateral, it says that 303 Battery will be the world's first certified zero energy high-rise residential tower. What does that certification mean, and how did you get it?
Sure. So that certification comes from the ILFI, the International Futures Living Institute in Seattle, who is really the platinum standard for certification of ultra-efficient buildings at different levels. And this building will achieve their highest certification of a living building, which means, among other things, that more than 105% of the energy it takes to run this building will be generated by solar dedicated to this building, and that 100% of the non-potable water requirements will be met with water generated on site. And so as a result, our advanced mechanical systems and our gray water system all add together to make this a first of its kind. Now, there are other buildings that have attained that rating, but usually they're single family homes, guest centers, maybe artist studios, nothing of this scale of a multi-family high-rise tower. By the way, generating solar power in the cloudiest city in America.
It does rain a lot there. Last time I was there, it was raining.
It does. And interestingly, the rain really didn't slow us down with our building system, which, by the way, is the only building system ever patented in the history of the United States. We have 156 patents and counting. But these panels and our system goes together in the rain, in the snow. It's all waterproof. It can sit out in the Seattle rain and not be affected.
Excellent. What about the desert and the other extreme weather conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. So the materials that we've chosen are made for durability and long life. These are, again, 75 to 100-year assets, inside and out. In fact, there's no paint, there's no drywall, there's no carpeting in any of our buildings, which not only reduces maintenance costs and allows materials to endure in any kind of severe weather or climate, but it also means that the building is, again, less energy intensive and has a smaller carbon footprint.
Now, this is, again, a case study, and it's the world's first certified net zero energy high-rise residential tower. Impossible to many. And you also had this pre-sold to Equity Residential upon completion, and that's fascinating. Tell us, please, the 303 Battery origin story. How did you come up with this idea of a zero net energy tower? And how did you sell that idea to Equity Residential, one of the shrewdest groups in the marketplace?
Boy, it's quite a story. To summarize, Randy, we started talking to Equity about this site in 2016, 6 years ago. They own the apartment building immediately adjacent, Moda Apartments, and so they had been looking at this site, the 6,000 square foot lot, as a potential site to expand that building. We came to them and said, hey, we could put a high-rise building on this site, lower the cost per unit of land, and if you guys are willing to buy it, we're willing to build it. And so we struck up an agreement for a very basic building that would be no frills, but keep the costs down. And about a year into that design process, we came to them with our ancillary work we'd been doing behind the scenes and said, listen, we figured out the last part of the equation, and we think this building could be zero net energy. It's going to cost more. It's going to take us an additional year of design work. But if you guys are in, we're in. We want to try it. And they came back to us and said, not only are they interested because the economics of this project are better than a conventional project, but that they really saw, even 6 years ago, that there was a need to start developing a new asset class of zero net energy buildings. And they wanted to be on the front end of that. So not only are we delivering this building to them, but we also have an agreement with them to deliver 9 more of these over time in different gateway cities. And so for us, our company wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be talking to you about this zero net energy building if it weren't for the vision and the willingness to get out in front of this from Equity Residential.
That's a great story. How are you able to achieve zero net energy on a high-rise apartment tower in the middle of the cloudiest city in America with high-level technical overview for the residents?
Yeah, it is not simple. It's a very complex challenge. And what we found is that it is a combination, as I said earlier, of, first of all, efficient design. Our buildings weigh 80% less than a conventional building, so there's just less stuff in it. There's less waste. If you go to this high-rise construction site, there isn't even a roll-off container on the site because there's no waste. And once you've figured all that out, then you get into the nitty-gritty. And so quickly, this building is 100% electric. There's no natural gas line. There's a moratorium on combustion in this building. Everything's electric. And that not only reduces the energy load, but it also meets the new building codes that are coming into line in California and Washington State, requiring 100% electric buildings. In addition, we've got on-site solar. The building, if anybody wants to check it out, is completely clad in solar panels. We have a dedicated off-site solar array that is part of this project and this building project that makes up for the difference because we are in such a cloudy city. But beyond that, we also have DC electric systems, so we don't have to rely on AC. We've got energy storage in the basement so that if rolling blackouts occur, we have resilient systems for the tenants. We use a waste heat extraction system that pulls out 92% of the heat of the wastewater before it leaves the building and reuses that. And so really what this is it starts with a customer that it has the vision like EQR to develop such a thing. It then goes to the design philosophy of minimal carbon and waste impact. And then it ends up with all kinds of engineering exercises that have to go across conventional, typical silos of engineering. Electrical engineers usually don't have to worry about how much thermal energy is in the wastewater from a plant. Our electrical engineers have to take that into consideration. So it was really a huge communal effort of designers and engineers, and then ultimately with contractors and steelworkers to make the project work.
Fascinating. So this year's theme is on attainability. How are you making sure that the SLI's net zero energy homes will be more affordable and more accessible? We call it here at MultiGreen attainable. How are you doing this for the people of all income levels?
That's the right question to ask, Randy. I think as people talk about sustainability or investors talk about ESG projects, more and more we see an emphasis on the E and less on the S. And the reality is we have a huge housing gap in this country, and we don't see this as a competitive choice. Many developers will tell you, well, you get to choose between green or affordable. We see green as efficient, less expensive, and therefore we see green as a pathway to attainability. And I think it's a combination of, yes, setting aside some units in every building we build for deed-restricted affordable housing, but more importantly that it is to show, first of all, to the industry that this kind of technology is attainable today for them. And then because people that call 303 Battery home won't be paying an electric bill, it makes it more affordable for everyone.
Well, the naysayers, the developers, the financiers, they're going to say, okay, SLI, you're building a high quality, high-tech living, attainable priced product. How do you make this work financially? What is your response to that?
It's an excellent question. From my experience in all of the renewable energy infrastructure, projects that I've done through the years, one thing is absolutely true. If you can't make more money doing it, it's not going to get done. And if you can make more money doing it, everyone will do it. And so what we're demonstrating to the market right now is that our high-rise buildings actually cost less to build than a conventional building up front. Not just faster, but less expensive to build. And they're 20 to 30% less expensive to operate. Simply put, investment community, not only do our buildings save money for the people that live in them, but they make more money for the owners. That's what efficiency does.
That is truly revolutionary. Thank you for sharing this story today. My last question for you today, Rick, is one that we ask all of our interviewees. Let's define attainability. What does it mean to you?
Randy, to me, attainability means not only that something's possible, but that it's available today. And the message we're trying to get out at SLI is that you don't have to compromise with conventionally built dirty buildings anymore. That reaching a zero net energy multifamily building is attainable today.
Rick, I couldn't define attainability better. Thank you so much for being on the MultiGreen podcast today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks again, Randy.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you for listening. Join us as we build 40,000 attainable, sustainable, and tech-enabled multifamily homes by 2030. And if you like the content you're hearing, hit the subscribe button. Follow us at Think MultiGreen and sign up to learn more at www.multi.green.